अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रं दीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवं यतीन्द्रप्रवणं वन्दे रम्यजामातरं मुनिं लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भां नादयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्म व्यामोहतस्तरितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये। मातापिता युवतयस्तनया विभूतिः सर्वं यदेव नियमेन मदन्वयानाम् आद्यस्य न कुलपतये रघुलाभिरामं श्रीमत्तदङ्घ्रियुगलं प्रणमामि मूर्ध्ना भूतं सरश्च महदाह्वयपट्टनाद श्रीभक्तिसारकुलशेखरयोगिवाहान् भक्ताङ्घ्रिरेण परकालितेन्द्रमिश्रान् श्रीमत्पराङ्कुशमुनिं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम्। ॐ अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तं मनुपेतोपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातराजुहाव पुत्रे तन्मयतया तर्वोऽभिनेदुः तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। श्रीसुखब्रह्मणे नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। हरिः ओम्. So thank you all for joining for today's session. So in the last session, what we have been seeing the conversation between Devahuti and Kapila Maharshi about various phases of human life that's going to from the place where he starts or where the person ends the life, and the journey towards Narkaloka and Svargaloka and the other stuff that we have seen. So in today's session, what Kapila Maharshi is going to talk about is the birth of the soul when it takes a birth, and how it happens, how the growth of the particular fetus or zygote to the state from zygote to fetus, from fetus to embryo to fetus and all, and the growth of fetus to baby. How does that happen? And the various phases of life. So first of all, we have to understand this. What is the reason behind Kapila Maharshi talking about going to hellish planets and the after effects of doing some karmic reactions or karmic activities, and why he has to explain the journey of the soul in mother's womb, and growing and then again dying and all that stuff. So he will reconcile at the end of this chapter. So if anybody want to look into this conversation, it's in third canto in the chapters, where you can happily go and read a more thorough review of this chapter. And I personally is very fond of this chapter. Everybody, most of today's people, or at least I can relate myself. I'm such a practical person. When I was doing my bachelor's, or when I came to UK, before I met devotees, I was so practical. All I want to do is, only if I see or if I listen from a trusted source, then I believe things. So there are so many things that I was wrong before I learned about devotion and learned about the scriptures, how to pursue things correctly. So when I met devotees, they educated me. They told me how the way to pursue things and how should we pursue things from the lens of Shastra. What is the reason behind having a Shastra in hand? So all that thing. So this chapter, when I read for the first time ages ago, it really helped me to build up my conviction and faith in Vedic education or in Vedic science. So what I'm going to do today is a comparative study between the modern science and what Kapila Maharshi has to say in the journey of that particular Jiva in mother's womb. How does it enter, and how does it grow, and where does it go to? That we will see. So you will see me looking into the text that I have made a note, because I don't want to miss any of the concept that Kapila Maharshi has said. So what I did was, I drew a comparison between what the modern science is saying and what Vedic science or Kapila Maharshi said. So we will draw a comparison, or we will see both versions of explanation of the Jiva. So let's start now. First of all, modern science, let's say, Kapila Maharshi is going to talk about a soul being born. Okay, in this class, that's what we're going to discuss on. Modern science starts from day one of Jiva entering into the body of mother. From there it starts. It goes to certain length and stops there. So let's say until baby is born. So 10 months or 9 months, let's say. So this 9 months, modern science talks. Kapil Maharshi also talked about this 9 months. Plus, what will happen before 9 months? How did the soul enter into mother's womb? That Kapil Maharshi will talk. How does it enter? Kapil Maharshi will talk. So, as most of us know, most of all of us in that matter, most of us know that a human or a male sperm enters into female and joins with female egg, and hence a zygote is formed. First of all, how does the soul enter into man? It's a soul, isn't it? So how does the soul enter into man? That's important that we have to identify and learn. So the soul is in Swargaloka, Narakaloka, or Pitraloka, basing upon the different kinds of karmic activities that we have seen in the past, in the last session, where the soul goes to either Narakaloka or Swargaloka and enjoys or get rid of all the sins or the karmic actions that it has to go through. And after that, if the punishment is finished or if the enjoyment is finished, it falls back. It falls back onto earth. How does it fall back? It takes the form of a water droplet from the sky. So how does it enter until there? It comes from a productive layer from that loka into Earth's atmosphere. When it comes to Earth's atmosphere, it takes the form of a bubble, like in a water droplet. So from rain or water droplet, the rain falls down. When the rain falls down, it enters into Earth's atmosphere. You see the journey of the soul, how difficult it is. So first of all, it has to travel from all the different lokas and come into Earth's atmosphere. In the Earth's atmosphere, it has to travel in the form of a bubble or in the water droplets and reach the ground. And that should go into some kind of food, plant, and that has to be eaten by the male. That's how the soul enters into the body of the male. Now, the food eaten by male will stay in the body of the male, that travels to forms a sperm, and in the sperm it travels to female in their intercourse, and that's how the soul enters into the body of a female. That's the journey of the soul that comes from different planet or various different sources of creation, and then comes down all the way and enters into this. Now let's stop here and try to analyze this. If you remember, in the olden days, or even the devotees now, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, offer the food to me and then eat. That will not bind you in the karmic activities. Now, each and every morsel, or at least some of us will have the practice when we take a morsel of food for the first time in the plate. We say we offer our obeisances, not obeisances, we offer respects to the plate of the food plate and then eat. First of all, the food will be offered to God. If the soul is in the food, let's say, in the food that we cooked, that food is offered to God. Now, what are we getting from God in that food? Is prasadam, isn't it? So, the ideology of the devotee starts from there, that we are taking an offspring of us, our kids, as the mercy, as the prasadam of Lord, not just by our endeavor. The first instance, the mindset of the devotee will be like that. Whatever comes from the prasadam. See, for example, when we cook prasadam to Lord, right? Sometimes because of change of the salt, the company of the salt or whatever, sometimes the salt won't be sufficient. Or sometimes the salt will be very high in the food that we cook. Sometimes we prepare a sweet, it's too sweet. Or sometimes there is no sweet at all. But do we complain? We don't. We don't even add extra salt or sugar or anything like that, or jaggery in the sweet and then eat. We eat as it is given, because that is what we offer to the God, and that is what He gave us. He gave it back, and we eat without any alterations to that. Sorry. So the way we take, because the consciousness of a devotee is that we take the prasadam as it is. We don't try to change it. We don't say, it is too, there is no salt at all, let's add some more salt, let's add some more pepper, let's add some more sugar, or there is too much of salt, let's put some more rice in it and make it like that. We don't do that. We take as a prasadam of the Lord. That is the conviction, because God knows how to take care of us. So he is giving us prasadam. So the devotee mindset will be like this. When we get something from God, whether it is in the form of food or baby or any kind of relations, that is because of God's mercy. We start with that journey. So let's come back to say the point where Kabir Maharshi is mentioning. How does the soul take a birth? He made a very interesting point, which was confirmed by Krishna and Gita also. He said, because of certain karma that the soul has to do, the soul enters into the womb of mother. Because of the karma. Which soul to enter? Why is that I should be born to my parents only? Why not to some other parents? Why is there somebody else born to them, not to my parents? Because of the karma that a person carries with. I cannot complain that I am not very super fair in complexion, or I don't have a 10 pack or 8 pack body. I cannot complain because that's my karma. I'm coming with that. I cannot complain that my father is not super rich. I have to work very hard and make money. You are coming with a karma. How many people who is having no money made billionaires because of their hard work? They say, because of the karma, the body, the soul takes the body of the or the form of the body in this creation. It could be a human form, it could be an animal form. It doesn't matter. Basing on the karma, it will take the form of the body. Now, the first day, this is where I'm going to draw the comparison between what the modern science has said and what Kapil Maharshi has said. Now, modern science has said so many things about the journey of soul from the first day of sperm entering into the woman's womb. Now, how do they know? By looking at by doing experiments, by looking at various kinds of studies, some equipment, microscope, whatever you say. They look at it and then they say. And then, what about Kapil Maharshi? When is this Bhagavatam written? 5,000 years ago. And when was Kapil Maharshi talking about this? Thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, the science that our Vedic texts or Puranas talk about is so valid even now. And it will be valid even after. Because that's coming from directly God. God is giving you the science. So it has to be true and it will be true. If we say today, we say, no, it is not true, then which means that we are wrong. Someday down the line, we will correct ourselves and say that is true. So the reason I am going to draw a comparison between modern science and what Kapil Maharshi has said is just for us to understand how valid the modern science is trying to validate what Vedic science is saying. Nothing like Vedic science is low or modern science is low in comparison. I'm just trying to reconcile between these two, what they have both said and how true the things are. And just to give you an inquisitive nature of how can our ancestors know about these details without having any kind of equipment. That is what we have to trying to understand. So the first day, the human, the male body, which is sperm, enters into the female body, which is called ovum, and they combine, it seems. The first day, what Kapil Maharshi said. And what did the modern science say? The sperm and egg mix and form a zygote. That's what the modern science say. So on the fifth day, the mixture, which we say that this sperm and ovum mixture, it ferments and forms into a bubble. So the modern science said, over the course of 7 days, the division of cells happen, which is called mitosis. At the end of this transition, sorry, 1 second. So at the end of this transition, it forms like a mass called blastocyst. It's a modern terminology. But what Kapil Maharshi has said is this: the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th day of the formation, on the 10th day, it forms like a plum and gradually turns into a lump of flesh by 10th day. So what did the modern science say about the 10th day? It didn't say anything definitive. It says from 1st day to 7th day, or the course of next coming 7 days, a blastocyst is formed, like a mass, like a ball, like a mass of ball, flesh. That's how it formed. What Kapil Maharshi has given is 1st day, 5th day, and 10th day. The declassification of the 10 days. How does it happen? Periodically, how does it happen? Now, until this point of time, everything married. Everything matches. The 1st day, zygote forms. 5th day, mixture ferments into a bubble. And on the 10th day, it becomes like a lump. flesh lump, which is exactly what Motor Science has said. Over a month, what Kapil Maharshi said is the head is formed. So at the end of the month, 1 month period, the head is formed. So what does the modern science talk about? In the first 4 weeks, a primitive face will take form with large dark circles of eyes. So the eyes are not formed yet, but the dark circles will be formed on that face. The mouth, lower jaw, and throat are developing. So for head means until here is called head. Vedic science talks about head means not just this. Until throat, it's called head. So what Motor Science has said is also similar to what Kapil Maharshi has said. Now, when I first read this, how does Kapil Maharshi know all this? How can he know? No equipment. But see the clarity of the level of granularity that they have given. Not just saying it is there, it is formed. See, for example, over the period of 3 months, if you say the fetus is taken out of the mother's womb or some kind of practicals happened in the laboratory, but how does the first day, 5th day, and the 10th day can be told? That is the level of details that they have given. So over the period of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. Kapil Maharshi said. Motor Science says tiny buds that eventually grow into arms, legs are formed. Fingers, toes, and eyes are also formed. So at the end of second month, limbs are forming as per Kapil Maharshi. And the science also says the same. Motor Science says the same. At the end of third month, nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ generation and other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. So various organs, including nails, fingers, toes, they start appearing by the end of third month. Now, what did the modern science say? The modern science says baby's arms, hands, fingers, feet, and toes are fully formed. Fingernails and toenails are beginning to develop and external ears are formed. The beginning of teeth are forming under the gums. Baby's reproductive organs also develop. By the end of the third month, baby is fully formed. This is what our Kapil Maharshi also said. Namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. That is formed. End of fourth month, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely chyle, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. Motor Science said the fingers, toes are well formed, eyelids, eyebrows, eyelashes, nails, and hair are formed. Teeth and bones become denser. Your baby can even suck his or her thumb, stretch, and make faces. So the bodily movements started happening. At the end of the 5th month, hunger, thirst for the baby started happening. So they now know hunger and thirst. What did the Motor Science says? At this stage, you may, or the person who is having, the lady can begin to feel the baby moving around. Baby is developing muscles and exercising them. At the end of 6th month, the fetus enclosed in the amniotic fluid begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. Now, what did the Motor Science say? The eyelids begin to part and eyes open. Baby responds to sounds by moving or increasing the pulse. You may notice jerking motions if baby hiccups. So baby movements are given now. So they are saying baby moves now. But Kapil Maharshi said the same thing. The fetus enclosed in the amniotic fluid begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. Now from here, Kapil Maharshi gives a description of how the body of the soul or the jiva nourishes. He says, deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abdominal residence of stool and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. So the body or the baby excrete in the same place where it's living. So Kapil Maharshi is saying that is the place where all kinds of breeding for the worms happen. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of his tiredness. He thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of terrible condition. This is at the 6th month. So which means that by 6th month, baby will be able to feel because the skin is formed already by 6th month. So a baby will be able to feel the pain and pleasure. So whatever the mother eats, whatever the mother takes, that will be reflected onto the baby. So what Kapil Maharshi is saying is, he is bitten, the jiva is bitten by the worms in the abdomen itself, and he thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of terrible condition. That is the place, that is the month where we go for a scan. When we have the baby, we go for a scan. I can't remember the scan name. It's called prenatal scan or something like that. Around that time, 6th month, 5th month, around the time we go. So that's the second scan that happens. First scan happens the 3rd month, second scan happens 6th month. So we go 6th month, there we go there. So they start looking at the baby with that sonar, whatever, and they see the baby movements and all. Baby wakes up for a minute, for 10 seconds, 50 seconds. They measure the head, they measure the body, the length, and everything. And immediately they say, we couldn't see, the baby is sleeping. The baby fell asleep. That's what they say. So modern science thinks that the baby is falling asleep. What Kapil Maharshi is saying is, no, the baby is not falling asleep. It is feeling unconscious because of bitten by worms in the body or in that amniotic fluid. Bitten by worms, it's getting unconsciousness because of the pain that it has to go through. Repeatedly. That's what we are seeing in the scan. When we saw the scan, when they keep saying the baby is sleeping, the baby is falling asleep, it is sleeping now, we are laughing. It's not sleeping. The baby is having trouble being in the amniotic fluid. That's what Kapil Maharshi said. Very clearly it is there. What we can see visually, what we can relate to. It's not sleeping. It won't sleep. How will the baby sleep straight away? But anyway, we are not questioning. We are just trying to understand. So then he says, owing to mothers eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs or food which is too salty, too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pain, which are almost intolerable. So mother eats food. It's a basic thing that in our Indian parenting, right from the when the baby falls, when the baby or when the news comes that the woman is pregnant, they first tell the first thing they tell is, now stop eating anything which is too salty, too pungent. Take care of the baby, because right from the beginning they tell you, whatever you eat, the child will be nourished by basing upon what you eat, and what you eat is what the child will be nourished with. So that platform is set because that science is given to us right from the beginning. We don't have to wait until modern science comes into place and say, yeah, what you eat is getting reflected to the child. So what we eat is there with the child. So they say don't eat too hot, too pungent, too salty, like that. Now modern science say asking don't smoke, don't drink. It's not good for the health of the baby, like that. Now when we go for they do lessons here in the pregnancy. They said they keep saying don't something like hot curry stuff at the end of the pregnancy, last trimester. They say eating hot curry, that will help you, or don't eat this kind of stuff, it will not so they give a classification, don't eat this and this in the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, like that. So it's a kind of food, what mother takes will have an impact on the child. So Kapil Maharshi said the similar thing where he says the food that mom is eating is causing pain on the skin of the baby, and that is more intolerable. It's not easy for the baby to, because the skin is so tender and so soft, it cannot handle that pain of the food that mom eats. If it is not like too I mean, it's like too salty and not too easily digestible. So placed within the amniotic fluid and covered outside by the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, the head turned towards his belly, and the back and the neck arch like a bow. So the formation of the child is also given. How does the child look like? Now we go to the sonar and we look at we look through that, some kind of race or some kind of machine that they see, and they say, yeah, the child is like this, which we can see in the photos as well. But that description of how the child will be, it says, Kabir Maharshi says, the head turned towards his belly. So the head will be towards the belly, and his back and neck arched like a bow. Very good description, I should say. The way the Kabir Maharshi described, it's exactly how it is. The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, this is very interesting. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he or she can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Kabir Maharshi says, if the child is lucky, it can go back to 100 births that it has taken and remember everything from the pains that it has gone through in the 100 births, and starts weeping continuously. It will weep out of pain. Now Kabir Maharshi is saying, what is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Zero for the child in the womb. Now 7th month comes. Kabir Maharshi is saying, by 7th month, fully conscious, the child is now fully conscious. It understands, it relates, it will speak, it listens to what you speak, it will try to digest what they are trying to say. So fully conscious, fully aware. Tossed downwards by the A's that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. He can't remain in one place. So they will be tossing. The A's will be tossing them to turn towards getting out of the mother's womb by 7th month. So what did Motor Science has to say in 7th month? The baby will continue to mature and develop reserves of body fat. At this point, the baby's hearing is fully developed. The baby changes position frequently and responds to stimuli including sound, pain, and light. The amniotic fluid begins to diminish. So what they're saying is, it responds, it understands, and it moves. What is the reason behind moving here and there? Because of the A is trying to push them down. The amniotic, the embryo, in Telugu there is I know the word. It's called prasuti vayu. We say the air that is responsible for the baby to come out. That wind will be pushing the baby down to make the baby turn head upside down. What does the Motor Science think? The baby is just moving here and there, fully developed here and there, moving here and there, having all kinds of sensitivities, including pain and all. Now, after 7th month, there is no description of whatsoever. It says the baby will continue to mature and develop. The baby will continue to mature and develop. After at the end of 8th month, the baby will mature and develop. End of 9th month, the baby will mature and develop. 10th month, the baby will be born. There is no description of the baby's growth. It just says it now matures and develop, matures and develop, matures and develop. That's all. 8th, 9th, and 10th month. After 7th month, nothing is given. This is where Vedic science starts. Now let's see what Kabir Maharshi has to say. From 7th, after end of 7th month, what will the baby or the soul will be doing? The living entity in this frightful condition of life, already pain. Second, physical pain because of the food whatever mom is taking. That pain is that the soul has to endure, and the pain that the soul recollected from 100 births that it has gone through, and again it has to go through because it's going to take a birth now. So it's a mental stress and a physical stress to be born in the human form, in the belly of a mother. So it's Kabir Maharshi is saying, the living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in this condition. Now the baby starts praying to the Lord. This is not told by modern science. It says, the human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, who appears in his various eternal forms, and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only. Now he talks about God. Now the soul talks about God. I have recollected my 100 births. I have seen the pain that I have gone through. If you remember in the last session, we were talking about what Kapil Maharshi has said in this human form of life. Never ever a soul will find enjoyment of the birth in the material world. Because this material world is not designed to have pleasure. This material world is designed to have misery. It's dukkhalayam. This material world is temporary. What we are seeing is temporary. Nothing is permanent. Once upon a time, if you are so handsome, if you are so rich, if you are so glamorous, if you have so much fame, nothing is permanent. What can we talk? Let's say, let's take cricket. Sachin Tendulkar is seen as god of cricket. Everybody knows that. He is super famous. Now, anybody is talking about Sachin Tendulkar now. Will they talk about him after 20 years? Maybe after 30 years, once in a while, they will say, yeah, there is a master blaster, Sachin Tendulkar, a very famous cricketer. How many people have lived on this planet who are super famous and died and not even cared for now? Okay, Sachin Tendulkar is a living, currently living. Let's not talk about him. Very great persons like Martin Luther King or Einstein. Einstein is not thousands of years ago, no? 100 years ago or 150 years ago maximum. Now, Edison, Nikola Tesla. How many people are talking about them? Nobody. They're very famous at that time. Einstein is even famous now, isn't it? Once in a while we talk about them. That's all. So if we are attached to that kind of fame, nothing is permanent in this world. Once your body is not permanent, your thought process is not permanent. What my thought process 10 years ago was different to what I'm thinking now. What I'm thinking now 20 years ago is different to what I'm thinking now. Because the thought process changes, because we perceive things, we understand things in a different format. Things are changing, ever changing. So it's all changes. Nothing is permanent. We have to try to, as a devotee, we have to try to understand that this material creation is dukkhalayam. It's only meant to give you misery, not even happiness. Kapil Maharshi repeatedly said this thing, that a soul will never enjoy even for a tiniest amount of time in this material creation, even though the person has taken hundreds and hundreds of births. Even then, the attachment towards the body is never lost. We have to try to get rid of it. He'll tell you in the later chapter, in the chapter. So he says, fallen into the pool of blood, stool and urine within the abdomen of the mother, his own body scorched by mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays to Lord, "Oh my dear Lord, when shall I be released from this confinement?" From 7th month onwards, he will be praying to the Lord, "I wanted to get out. I don't want to stay here. When can I come out of this? Out of the pain that it has to go through. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition," now see this, after experiencing all this in a 10th month around that time, he says, "Even though I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen." It is going through pain, a lot of pain, confinement place. Now imagine staying in the house for 6 months, having so much of space, food to eat, we are getting bored. Now imagine a situation where you are put in a place and you are conscious, where you can only fit in and you cannot even move happily. Just fit into the place, confinement, and you stay there for 3-4 months with fully consciousness. Imagine situation. That's how the soul is, the jiva is in the mother's womb. Even then, see the prayers of the soul to the jiva, to God. "I am living in a terrible condition. I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life." See the word that the jiva used. in the blind well. So it's so deep. It's not easy to come out. And it's blind well of materialistic life. Your Maya at once capture the newborn child and immediately give a false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death begins. The moment I come out of this mother's womb, I will be dropped into the materialistic life. Then I'll get a false sense of identification that this is my body. I am not soul. I'm the body. That gives me again starting of life cycle of birth and death, which means that again I have to come and experience the same situation after this body is passed away. One day or the other, you have to leave the body, and the soul realizes that looking at 100 births that it has gone through. Now it knows that he has to leave the body now also. So it is saying, don't even get me out of this mother's womb. That's what he is asking. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nescience with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. So now the Jiva concludes, my dear Lord, this is how I am going to plan. I am going to have Lord's lotus feet in my mind. And with one point of devotion, I will never enter into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Now, Kapil Maharshi is again continuing. He says, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires. You know, how many months old it is? 10 months old. Even the 10 months old have this kind of list of desires with them while in the womb. But while he thus extols to the Lord, the wind that helps the peoples from the birth, with his face turned down so that he may be born. So he'll be praying to the Lord, please don't let me go. But the Vayu will push him down. The wind will push him down to come out of that mother's womb. Will that be a safe journey? Will that be any happy journey? No. Isn't it? Can the soul, will the Jiva just come out like, oh hi, I'm here? Already the Jiva in the mother's womb is going through a lot of hell. Now see what will happen. Pushed downward, all of a sudden, by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble. Head downward, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. I have my friend's wife in UK only. She is going through delivery phase. The baby is not coming out. How much ever mother pushes, the baby didn't come out. In the last minute, they have to do a surgery to get the baby out. It's not easy for the baby to come out. It has to go through a lot of pain and agony to come out. The child thus, from here the cinema begins, I would say. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and placed just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses the superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. Once he is out, the Maya comes and engrosses him, engrosses the condition of the soul. So now the soul will forget the superior knowledge that he came, everything is, this is ignorance and all. So he will be under the spell of Maya. After coming out of that abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants. We don't know what the baby wants. Baby cannot speak. And thus he is nurtured by such persons who don't know what he wants, unable to refuse. Now see the pitiful condition of the Jiva at the time. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. See, even if he don't want to drink milk, he cries. We think he wants milk, so we feed milk. Whether the Jiva wants milk or doesn't want milk, we don't know. All we do at the time is nourish him. He might even cry because of overnourishment. We don't know. But the Jiva is see the wording of Kapil Maharshi. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his own body to get relief from the itching sensation to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. So he cannot say, he cannot sit, he cannot stand. The baby will be lying on the floor. If there is a lot of sweat, it cannot even, if there is any itching sensation, it cannot even do that. They just cry. Mother will pick him up, or somebody else will pick them up. See the pain that it has to go through. Now see, in this helpless condition, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bits the baby, whose skin is so tender, just as smaller worms bit a bigger worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. Now it doesn't even know. In the mother's womb, at least he know that what is he going through. So consciously he is in pain. But when he comes out, the knowledge is gone. Now he's in a state of confusion. Why is he crying? Why is the pain happening to them? They don't know. That is the state of the baby. In this way, the child passes through the childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood, 5 years. And boyhood is around, it's called Pauganda. In Telugu or Sanskrit, they say Pauganda, the stage where after 5 years, it's called Pauganda. He suffers pain, desires to get things he can never achieve. And thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry. So youthful state, youthhood, where they come, they don't know what they're trying to do in the real world, or they might know, and sometimes they could not achieve. And what will happen? Naturally, you'll get angry because you couldn't achieve. After that, you'll be sorrow that I couldn't achieve. So that's what's happening. Now, what will happen if you can't achieve? Pain comes into your heart, into your mind. Then you go with bad association of people. How many times we have seen even in movies are the biggest blunder of the human creation. Let's keep that aside. But how many times in the movie that you have seen them showing that if somebody is feeling pain for any reason, for any silly reasons, they feel pain, they turn towards God. They will never show that, because that is what not people do. What should people do is to turn towards God. Having at least seen that kind of pain that you have gone through, you should turn towards God. But people don't do that. People turn towards another kind of a replacement of their enjoyment. So too much of stress, what will happen? Too much of stress, people become schizophrenia, this bipolar. They become like that because of too much of stress. But what should we do? We should encourage the child towards devotion right from the beginning. So see what Kapil Maharshi is saying now. Once the person is associated with the bad people, the person will lose. He told about 11 qualities that a person will lose once if he associates with bad people. See them. Saucham, cleanliness. Daya, forgiveness or mercy. Maunam, not speaking too much. Buddhi, intelligence. Lajja, shy. Aiswarya, wealth. Kirti, fame. Orimi, patience. Indriya Nigraha, control over Indriyas. Mano Nigraha, control over Manas. Guna Sampada, character. These 11 qualities will be lost with the bad association of people. With the association of bad people, I mean. Now, at the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. That is the attraction for a man towards woman. Now he's saying a living entity, this is really interesting. A living entity, especially to all the women here, please listen to this. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in the previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. Now, Kapil Maharshi is talking about why a woman has taken the form of a woman. Not all the cases, but most of the times, if a man in the previous, if a woman in this life, let's say soul A got a form of a woman, So what Kavanaugh is saying is the soul A in the previous birth is too much attached to woman, and thus he has taken form of woman in this life. Now what will happen in this life? Foolishly looks upon her husband and thinks that he is the bestower of health, kids, house, and other material assets. A woman, therefore, see the warning that Kavinash is giving, or let's say suggestion, not warning, suggestion. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of Maya, which is the servant of the Lord, for her death. Just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. You know, the hunter sings a song, and the deers, which are very attached to the sounds, the music, it comes in front of the hunter, searching for where the sound is, inquisitiveness of the sound. And what will happen? The hunter throws an arrow, and it kills the deer. So Kabir is giving an analogy that woman should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the Lord for her death. Arrangement of Maya, not Lord. Maya for her death. Just as the sweet singing of the hunter, which means that he is asking all the women to be very careful. Don't engross yourself in the materialistic way of life. Just to see your husband, your children, and your house as an arrangement, just for maintenance body. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in the fruitive activities and enjoys the result incessantly. Now, it's talking about the karmic activity. Why the person has to move from planet to planet? Because of this karmic activity. Now, then he explains about what is death and what is birth. This is the statement. When I read the sloka, it really opened my eyes. It became, my faith in devotion becomes 100 times just to be reading the sloka. So he gives two slokas, one at the karmic level, one at the physical level. See, when we say birth and death, what we say, what is birth? When do we consider birth? I was never able to define death properly, define birth properly. Death we can understand. Death is like something like he passed away, so it is death. We are seeing death. We are not experiencing death. We are seeing death. So is the case of birth. We are seeing birth. Somebody is born, or I don't know when I was born, and I will never know when I was dead. Isn't it? So I'll tell you one statement by Shankaracharya. So one person came to Shankaracharya and said to Shankaracharya, I am so afraid of death. I don't know what's, I'm very afraid of death. This thing I'm telling you, you will see in this loka by many number of people. They'll be too scared of death. The moment you say death, they'll be like, it's like taboo. Don't talk about death. You bad person. Why bad omens all the time? It's not a bad omen. It is something that will happen. And then if you say that, then they'll say, oh, should that mean that you're talking about it? Well, you have to talk about it. You have to prepare yourself. The life is a preparation. Death is the examination. This is the preparation that we have in this human form of life for the death to happen. When you die, you have to pass the exam. What is passing the exam? Not to be born again. If you fail, you will be born again. You will be given this chance only once. We don't know how many number of times it will take again to come to this human form of life. In that human form of life, how many times do we get association of devotees? How many times do we know about Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or Vedas? And how many times we get a chance to sit like this? Who knows? Pandemic happens once in 100 years, it seems. Luckily, it happened this time. People are dying. That's okay. I'm feel very sorry about it. But I'm just saying, because of pandemic only we started the sessions, isn't it? And we are able to listen and learn about Bhagavatam. How many times will we get a chance? Who knows? When will we get a chance again? So see what. So please make sure that you utilize every moment of this human form of life. I will tell you. I will ask you one question. You can remember what you ate today morning, today afternoon. Can you tell me what did you eat 1 week ago, 2 months ago, 1 year ago? What you have eaten is what you are now, isn't it? So each and every action we perform now is what we will be becoming in the future. So don't waste our time. Human form of life is very precious. I keep saying this in every session, but this is what it is. Human form of life is very, very precious. Devotion is the only way we have to get rid of this birth cycle. What I have said you now, you might feel when we listen to the journey of the jiva in mother's womb, we might have feel, oh, so sorry about the child that was born to us. But we have been through the situation. We in the mother's womb has gone through the same situation. If we don't follow devotion, and if we are not in the devotional path, then we might face it again. The helplessness. Now, if I tell you your karmic bondage is going to lead you into another birth, this is a chance for you to restrain yourself from not happening. When we are in the mother's womb, there is no chance, no help. It's a helplessness situation. It's like a punishment staying in mother's womb. That's what, no, if you see Purandaradasa or Tyagaraja or Annamacharya, when they sing the songs, when they write the songs, they compose it, they say, my dear Lord, you don't have to come through mother's womb, but yet you have come to the mother's womb. Because coming to mother's womb is not a very good and auspicious thing. It is a very, very painful thing which we have just learned. Yet Lord came through the path in the mother's womb, and then he came out for us to protect us. Now see what Kapil Maharshi says about birth and death. The living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses according to the fruitive activities, according to the punya or papa. It takes a birth, it takes a human form of life. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, so when the karma comes to an end, it is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. When the karma ends, when certain type of karma ends, or the prarabdha karma ends, it's called death. So you comes with a karma for this body, for this life. If that ends, that's death. If it begins, that's birth. That's at the karmic level. At the secondary physical level, he says, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occur, I can feel, I can touch, I can see, is rendered incapable of perceiving. When the senses cannot perceive anymore, that is called death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. You see the difference? Karmic level, when karma finishes, it's death. When karma starts to play, it's birth. Physical level, when the senses cannot perceive anymore, it's death. When you identify yourself with the body, it's birth. Therefore, see, from here he reconciles why he has to talking about the journey of the soul. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. The reason that he's saying is, you realize the true nature. We are souls. Have the Atma Swarupa Gnana, which he is talking about in the previous chapters. One should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in the purpose. What is the purpose? Eternal service to God. That is the purpose. That is the only purpose that every man or human should achieve for. Moksha. Eternal servitude to the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of life. Devotion to the Lord. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service. See this. And a pessimistic attitude towards material identity. So what is the identity? Material identity. It starts with the body. See, now we have we say biometrics, ID cards, and retina scanning, all that kind of stuff. So what is this for? Identity, just to say that it is me, to prove it's me. But for the soul, what is identity? It's the body. So he is saying, Kavinash is saying, have the pessimistic nature towards the body, material identity. One should relegate this body to this illusory world through this reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. That is how we can put a full stop to this material world and the enjoyment towards the material world. So I will stop here. This is where we end the today's session. I hope you got an understanding of what Kapil Maharshi has said. So the takeaway point is this: the journey of the soul through this body, coming from mother's womb, is not an easy, comfortable path. It's the very horrible helplessness situation that the body, the jiva, will put in. So the soul enters into the mother's womb on the day one. So what does we our devotees recommend to do? They said, when you are carrying, when mother is carrying, try to be peaceful. Already the baby is super agitated. So what does our elders or our devotees suggest? Try to be peaceful during the pregnancy. Read Bhagavad Gita or read Bhagavatam. Listen to Ramayana. Listen to God, because that will pacify the child. Already the child will be in a lot of distress because of remembering so many births and all. Now, if the way to pacify him is to say that you are coming into an environment where you will be peaceful, where you will pursue where you stopped. If we cannot create certain kind of environment to the child, what are we for? Even a pig is having a baby. A dog is having a baby. We are also having a baby. What's the difference? We should lead in the human form of life. We should lead them into the path of devotion. See, Kapil Maharshi also says in one of the sloka, the jiva says, my dear Lord, when the prayers are offered to the Lord, he says, my dear Lord, this is the only form of life where I can alter my karmic reactions, where I can become your devotee. Whereas other forms of life, I can only experience the karma. There is no other option. I have to go through the karma, but I cannot change, because I only believe what I see. Animals can only believe what they see, isn't it? They cannot think like us. They cannot think with a perception. They cannot give a reason. It can only do what it sees. But whereas in the human form of life, we got an opportunity where we can transcend this. So please make use of this human form of life. It's not easy. At the same time, it's not impossible. Take the shelter of Acharya. Take the shelter of Bhagavad Gita. Take the shelter of Bhagavatam. Take the shelter of devotees. And we can succeed in this. So I hope you all enjoyed the session. So if you have any questions, now open to questions. Sai, any questions, Sai?
No questions, Prabhuji.
Okay, good. Thank you. Raj, any questions?
No, Prabhuji, but nice class. It's like it's surprising. How they know all these things. Hundreds and hundreds of years back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thousands of years ago.
It is surprising. Yeah, like thousands of years ago.
This book, at least we know it was written 5,000 years ago. Let's say it was written 2,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, at least Ramanujacharya was there. Shankara was giving references from Bhagavatam and all. So it was there 2,000 years ago. But we are talking about cells at a cellular level, how the zygote is forming and how they are mixing and how the lump is forming. How? Except that we got the help of God.
Yeah, that's so surprising and astonishing, Prabhuji. How do they know all these things? And they have written it as well.
Yeah, correct.
Oh.
So they
Yeah, nice class.
Oh yeah, thank you. So they know the science behind how it's happening, and they told you solution as well. So the soul is going through pain. So mothers, when you're trying to give birth, or when you're carrying a soul, see that as a mercy of the Lord, and then pursue it how should you give them a nice atmosphere? Listen to Bhagavatam, listen to Ramayana, read related to stories to God. Generally, women usually what I've seen is that they listen to Ramayana, Bhagavatam, and they read the 10th canto of Bhagavatam of Krishna's pastimes. So there are many things that they follow. Some read Vishnu Sahasranama all through. Every day they follow Vishnu Sahasranama. So there are many ways of giving the soul the comfort when you are in the womb. So like that. So motherhood or parenthood doesn't start after the child is born. The moment you perceive or you think, oh, I want to have a child, that's when the parenthood starts. The motherhood starts from there.
Yeah, true, Prabhuji.
Any other question, Raj?
No, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Good. Mataji, any questions?
Thank you for the class, Prabhuji.
Good.
I have one general question, Prabhuji.
Sure, Mataji.
Just I want to know from Ramayana that why Lord Rama took the help of Vanara to go to Sri Lanka, Lanka to battle Ravana.
Yeah.
Why he didn't need the help of any people, normal people, or his brother Bharata or any rishis to go to Lanka. So why he specially took the help of Vanaras? Is there any specific reason for that, Prabhuji?
Good question, Mataji. Good observation. Maybe that Vanras are very lucky that they got the association of, not lucky. They must be devotees of the Lord. Or else why could they get association of Lord Himself, that they can do some service to the Lord. So the thing is, again, I don't know the actual reference where it is from, but the story I heard from the speakers is that it is the curse of Narad Maharshi to Lord Vishnu. Now this is very I can't even imagine this story, but this is how the curse is. The curse is that Narad Maharshi to Vishnu is that you, in your next avatara, you have to take the help. You have to do friendship with Vanaras to fulfill your avatara, the reason for your avatara. So that's the reason they have to be Rama has to take the help of Vanaras. So Brahma tell to all the devatas that Rama is going to come. When he descends, he needs some help. So you have to go. There is a curse for him, for Lord Vishnu. So you have to go and expand the progeny of Vanaras with your mighty. Devatas are very strong. So with their amsa, they will be more stronger. The Vanaras. Usually Vanaras are very strong. So you go there, you have more and more progeny of Vanaras. So you can they can come and help Rama in the battle. So that's the reason behind why Vanaras has to help Rama. Now Rama is already midway of India when Mother Sita was abducted. Now the king Chakravarti is Bharata, and he know by the signs which were told that Mother Sita was flown to south. Now he doesn't know if it is Ravana or somebody else. All he knows is she was flown to south. So he has to go towards south, searching south. That's where he met Anjaneya, and then Vanara has come. That's how he carried away. Because Vanaras are not like monkeys. They are Vanaras. They are proper people who can change their form. If they want to change, they can change the form to any other form, like humans also. So when Hanuman spoke to Rama, he was in the form of an yeti, sannyasi. And then subsequently he turned himself into Vanara and showed himself up, and then took to Sugriva, and the friendship happened and all that. So he took the help of better people than humans in terms of capability to find Sita and fight the army of Ravana. That's the reason. Because Kishkinda and all is on the south only, no? I mean, in the Deccan Plateau near Nashik. So that's where Kishkinda is. So that's how he was going towards south, and then that's how it happened. Good. Did I answer the question, Raj?
Oh, okay, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. And my second question is, mm, why Rama helped Sugriva instead of Vali? Is there any specific reason for that, Prabhuji? Because Vali is the elder brother, so obviously he has to rule the kingdom. But
Right.
Sugriva, why he wants to rule and why he took the help of Rama to defeat his brother?
Mataji, I think we have to go with Ramayana classes first, because the thing is, uh, Sugriva don't want to rule the kingdom. He was forced to rule the kingdom because of the situations. So that's a separate topic that we will talk later. But this thing was told by Vali when Rama shot the arrow to kill Vali. Vali fell down and he said, "I am the king. I have the army, and Ravana is such an incapable person in front of me. I can fight him." And the story is like this. This Vali is so powerful, so strong. What he did was he was doing his Sandhya Vandana. So Ravana came. Ravana came and started disturbing Vali. Ravana is super powerful, super strong. You know what Vali did? He took his tail and folded Ravana in his tail and went to all the directions and did Sandhya Vandana and came. That powerful Vali is. So he said, if you just tell me about this situation about Mother Sita, I would have got from Ravana matter of minutes. It could have solved. Why did you take the help of Sugriva, who is incapable, doesn't even have an army? Why are you helping him? He said, Sugriva is truthful. I stand by truth. If I win or I lose, I stand by truth. That's what Rama said. It's about following dharma. You know, in case of Guha, Rama addressed Guha as Atma Sakha, a friend near to myself. Why? Because Guha lived with the principles of dharma. So, in Rama's point of view, if a person is dharmic, if a person who follows dharma is very close to and dear to Rama, that is the reason why he led Vibhishana to come to his fold, because Vibhishana is dharmic. Vibhishana stood by dharma, the principles, ethics, and values. That's what Rama likes. That's what Rama sees, and that's what Rama take the side of. If you are dharmic, then I'll take the side of you. If Rama is by your side, then naturally you'll win. But that's a different thing. But he stands by the truth. He stands by the side of dharma. Sugriva is dharmic, so he stood by Sugriva, like that. There's a whole episode which we can discuss at some point, but the reason is that.
Mhm.
So the question is, he can stand by Sugriva, but why should he kill Vali?
Mm.
So that we can discuss later on. But I think did I answer the question?
Yes.
Good. Hari bol, Hari bol. Pranav, any questions?
No, Prabhuji.
Excellent, Pranav. Thank you. So if nobody has any questions, then we can do the Mangal Sloka and we can depart for today. Right. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्य परिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महिं महिषाः गोब्राह्मणेभ्यः सोमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ओम अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः जय श्रीमन्नारायण